The boat and fish metaphor in EMDR therapy. Most people that we train understand standard protocol well enough, and they understand EMDR's adaptive information processing model well enough to generally grasp it. I'm not sure that they understand well the implications of the AIP model for clients with complex trauma. Standard protocol walks you through the mechanics of what EMDR therapy is, which is in the reprocessing phases, tolerable activation of a specific piece of memory content, deep present-based noticing, and doing this while the nervous system receives a left-right stimulation. That process facilitates what is happening beneath the client's awareness, which is that the difficult and stuck information starts to connect with existing adaptive information. And Shapiro was clear that you have to have enough of the needed adaptive information somewhere in you for EMDR therapy to work. Who has a lot of adaptive information? Healthy people. People with complex trauma generally have profound deficits in adaptive information because life didn't bring them the opportunities to develop it. In other places, I've suggested that we can think about adaptive information as learning that's different than the learning in the trauma. And if you're not sure about their fund of adaptive information, think about what you know about the client's timeline. When would they have had the opportunity to develop it? EMDR therapy involves more than simply gathering traumas and running the client through an EMDR machine. Beneath the hood, the old stuck information has to have enough of the needed existing right now information to connect to and metabolize into. Much of our phase one should be an assessment of the client's fund of adaptive information. Whatever the client's trauma, I have a general sense of how that might get better using the 8-phase protocol. But what I don't know when I first meet a client is what is the difficult stuff going to connect to, and is there enough of it? With clients with complex trauma, we should assume that the boat of adaptive information is small. This means things. If EMDR therapy isn't a magic wand that simply metabolizes whatever you point it at, then maybe we should be careful with clients related to how big of a fish we try to land. We trained you to work with a relatively healthy person that has a relatively large boat. That's probably not who your clients actually are. It's lunacy to try to land a whale into a canoe and to try this the first time the client goes fishing. Horrible idea. EMDR therapy is going to be a while with these clients. We're not in a sprint to be done in 8 to 12 sessions with clients with severe trauma. So the boat and the fish metaphor comes from the implications of the AIP model. You can't land a fish bigger than your boat. You can't resolve a memory if you don't have enough of the needed existing adaptive information for it to connect to. You can't. Fortunately, adaptive information isn't one thing. In some target domains, clients may be reasonably well resourced. In others, they may have profound deficits. But if you work often with clients with severe and complex trauma, you'll find repeatedly that things don't go well when you start with huge targets first. That might also cause harm, and it may eventually lead to therapist disengagement from this therapy. I've never regretted starting with a small target with a client with complex trauma. This allows us to test the gear and to make sure that the clients have a boat that actually floats and is solid enough to land something. If it turns out that your clients are far more resourced than we anticipated, we can easily adjust our targets accordingly and work on bigger stuff sooner. The boat and the fish metaphor remind us about what's actually happening in this version of healing. It reminds us about the AIP model and can help explain why things go well sometimes in EMDR therapy and why they go very, very bad sometimes. Nothing I've said here is particularly controversial when working with clients with severe trauma, and nearly everything I've said here you can find Shapiro herself saying in her core text.